What's up, James?
Hey, TJ. Thanks for having me on.
Appreciate it, dude. It's a long time in the making. I know we've been talking about it for a while. Finally made it happen. And yeah, excited to jam about your story, your work in the world, and what you're up to. So, where are you at now? Like, what's your who is James Barry? Like what's shaking?
Yeah, well, James Barry is in a big transition right now, but I've been a professional chef for over 17 years, and had a meal delivery service. Kind of a kind of a similar vein to what you guys are doing now. But I then sold that. That was in LA, and I previously had also private chef for a lot of celebrities and people of high worth. And then I sold my business, and I just kind of needed to get my health back. And maybe anyone that you might identify with that. Maybe anyone that's an entrepreneur who's listening might identify with that. When you may be promoting health, that's what I was doing, but yet the person who wasn't being healthy was myself, and that's because I was just working on the business so much. The hours, I didn't work out, I didn't eat well, I didn't sleep. I mean, everything that matters, I was not doing. And I did that for 8 years. And so when I sold the business, I was very adamant about just getting my health back. And so I was a stay-at-home dad for about 4 years, got my health back. And during that time, that's when I came up with this new idea for a product to support people in getting organ meat nutrition into their diet, but get it easily and deliciously. Because I was really, as a father, I mean, this was my second born child that I was being a stay-at-home dad for. And as a father, I really just was focusing on, well, what are the most nutrient-dense foods on the planet? And how do I get over the hurdles? How do I make sure that I get those foods into my kids, into anyone else that needs them? And I identified organ meats. I mean, hands down, the most nutrient-dense food on the planet. But we're not eating them because we think they're icky. We don't know how to cook them. We've lost the art of cooking them. We're overwhelmed by them, or we don't know how to source them. So I came up with Pluck, which is an organ-based seasoning. So I'm taking the freeze-dried powdered organ meats that you'd find in capsules, combining it with organic spices and herbs. And now you're simply using it like salt and pepper. You sprinkle it on your food daily, multiple times. Every time you eat, you sprinkle your food. And now you're getting that microdosing frequently, which is cumulative effect. And just really excited because I'm a very, very big proponent of nose to tail, whole animal.
Yeah.
And so we've been around now 3 years, and I'm just seeing amazing response of people going like, wow, I can't believe it's this easy. I'm so excited. I've known for so long that I should be eating organ meats, but I just couldn't do it. And I want to out myself because I'm one of those people. Like I know to get organs at the farmer's market. I get them, and they've been in my freezer for a year. You know what I mean? Like even those of us with best intentions still don't do it.
Totally. I was gifted lamb liver for my birthday like a few weeks ago by a good friend, Justin. And then I've got other grass-fed beef liver from years ago that's still in the freezer. I haven't done anything with it. And you're right. It is a challenge for those that aren't too savvy and on the know-how. And it's also just kind of like a foreign thing. Like, it's one thing to not have skills with just chefing or prepping in general, which obviously you do have those. I'm mainly talking about me. But it's another for a type of food like organ meats, which yes, it as you describe, and we'll get into it, is one of the most highly nutritious foods on the planet. But it's kind of like, I don't know, like the society giving it a little stigma, like you said, like it's gross, it doesn't taste good. And yeah, it's obviously you can't buy it at a McDonald's or, any regular, most restaurants, right?
No, not many. I mean, a lot of French restaurants, of course, serve it, but then you're at a more high-end meal. But, historically, it really goes back. I've done a lot of research on it, and it's fascinating. Right around World War II, before World War II, people were eating organ meats, but it was actually not as popular as you might have thought for back then. So even during World War II, there was this fear of protein shortage because all the muscle meat was going abroad to the soldiers. So they were worried that our country was not going to have enough protein, muscle meat protein. And so they started to do campaigns for organ meats to influence people to start eating organ meats again. And they even did Meatless Mondays. That's when Meatless Mondays came out. And it was the government that was doing it. It's fascinating. So there was this huge push. It ended up being fine. We didn't have a protein shortage, but it was during that time that organ meats kind of took off again. And before that, they were really seen as poor people's food. And so during World War II, they got popular again. They started coming out with really hip names like variety meats, anything to kind of like, like remove the stigma that organ meats had. Another name for organ meats is offal, OFFAL, which is of course a perfect name since a lot of people think it's awful tasting, but they think that name offal, OFFAL, comes from when you slaughter the animal. It's the parts of the carcass that fall off right when you cut down that abdomen. So that's where they think the name came from, but it worked. World War II, people started eating again. Soldiers came back. Now you had while the men were away, women started working. And the women didn't want to stop working, so now you had households that had double incomes, and they didn't want to buy what was deemed poor person's food. So they then lost favor again. But you talk to most of our parents, grandparents, maybe depending on how old people are, grandparents, but you talk to most of them and they'll say they grew up eating, particularly liver and onions. That was their big dish.
Right.
But a lot of them were forced. A lot of them were forced to eat it. So then that's why they then stopped pushing it on their kids.
So this was like the lowest cost meat available.
Yeah.
And like you said, World War II, worried about the shortage. So Meatless Mondays, you're telling us like the vegans and those against meat consumption were not the creators of Meatless Monday?
I know. Isn't that wild? They weren't. But they've taken it back. It's like take back the night. They took Mondays. But
right.
But yeah, I mean, it's funny when you do the research, a lot of the things that we assume are newer actually have been around, and or this is just the cyclical effect of it. It's like it came out a long time ago, it lost favor, and now it's coming back, whatever it is.
Right.
Yeah. So now we're in a stage though where organ meats, we're starting to realize that, okay, our food supply is not as nutrient dense. They've been tracking the produce that comes from the US since the 50s. And every decade it depletes. Every decade it's lower and lower the amount of nutrition in it. And there's lots of causes for that. Most of them are agricultural practices, modern agricultural practices. Right. So we are faced with the reality that our society is deficient in nutrients. It's something like 93% of Americans are nutrient deficient, but clearly we're not calorie deficient. So that's a really important distinction. We are not starving. It's the food choices we're making.
Yeah. One of my other guests recently said that, well, to describe professional baseball players, but it's probably true with average American, we're overfed and undernourished.
Yep. Yeah.
And so that is the wake-up call for people if they feel like they fall in that category. For those that are kind of already kind of dialed in, maybe the remaining 7%, the health hackers out there, which, a lot will be listening to this. What you've created is, so let's get into like why organ meats are the most nutrient dense. Like, what are the top nutrients? What are the top organs that you use? Let's talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Well, so Pluck, I'm using 5 organs, and this is typical organ blend. What I'm about to share, it's liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. So it's 5 organs. We're sourcing it from 100% grass-fed cows. We're really sourcing it from the same place that supplement companies are. Mm-hmm. The difference, though, is that we are promoting eating it versus swallowing your nutrition. And before I even go into the nutrients, I'll just share a little bit about that, because on a certain level, what I'm about to say is going to make extreme sense to people. but yet we're not doing it. So when let's say you need salt, when you're low in sodium, if I put salt on your tongue, your body will communicate immediately whether you want more or less. The salt will actually taste good. And if you don't need any, it won't taste good. It will be too much. And usually you can't get past maybe 3 dips of your finger in some salt. Usually not even past 2. So your body, that is an immediate communication, innate communication that your body has with your brains based on your digestive process, because you are basically following your innate digestive process, right? So if you then take a salt tablet, if you swallow that, you completely bypass that process, and you then get a delayed response. So maybe 20, 30 minutes later, you're like, why am I bloated? Oh, I got too much salt, right? Mm-hmm. So one, when we eat it, is working with our body and is being customized to exactly what our body needs. And the other is guesswork. And that's why I'm a big, big proponent of it. As much as you can. Of course, there's times you got to, there is a time and place for supplements. But for my money, organ meats are not it. Like, organ meats should be eaten, not swallowed.
I hadn't heard that view before, but it makes sense. I mean, it's not apples to apples with salt. I definitely agree with you on the salt thing. That's a great way for anyone that, might have adrenals that are stressed out. And I've been on several consults with our doctor and our clients to, talk about the importance of getting more salt and high quality salt, of course. And you're right. I mean, by experience, I can relate with when I actually, by the way, went to the emergency room for low sodium.
Really?
I'm 35. Wow, I just turned 35. This is my first interview after turning 35.
Oh, wow. Happy belated.
Middle of a decade. About 10 years ago, I went to the emergency room in Iowa. I collapsed at brunch. I was keto, which is naturally dehydrating. Pulled out a lot of hydrating foods from the diet, i.e. fruit. I didn't have enough salt, too much caffeine, which is very dehydrating, and went to the emergency room for low sodium. I didn't know it was low sodium until like a few days later, of course, because it's the emergency room of Western medicine and you don't really have great answers. So anyways, that was a huge wake-up call for me on the importance of salt and overall electrolyte breakdown. So yeah, here is your product, by the way. If you're watching the video, I brought one of the samples that we have. So this is your pure product. So I love your point around 100% grass-fed beef, and not just grass-fed, but also pasture-raised, right? Which,
right.
How the animal is treated makes such a difference in the health of that animal, which translates to the health of the individual, but also that entire ecosystem, the planet, right? How we treat the earth. So those 5 organs you mentioned, which one do you use the most of? Is it liver?
Liver, it's highest in liver. So we're using those 5 organs. There's this concept called like supports like, and it's more of an ancestral concept, but the point being that the organ that you're eating is supporting your organ. So the nutrients that are in liver, they're there for a reason, because that liver's got a job to do, right? So that liver is basically what it's doing is it's taking byproducts and it's making them water soluble so that they can then be excreted from your body. So they're not. A lot of people sometimes think they're storing toxins, and it's like, well, if you're a healthy person or a healthy animal, they're not going to be storing. Usually, toxins are stored in the fat, but they do have a job to do, and they're very, very effective. But the nutrients in them, what basically composes that organ, is the same nutrients that support your own organ. And heart is a perfect example of that. So heart is high, and this is beef heart. Heart is high in CoQ10, which probably most people listening to this have heard of that, because it's been a very popular supplement to take to support heart health. You also have, it's really high in B12, which is muscle meat also has that, but those are all anti-aging nutrients. They're anti-fatigue. They're all really helpful but are particularly focusing on cardiovascular health. But so that like supports like is really intriguing to me, and one that I want to explore further as we develop more products, because I know there's no linear line of saying like, oh, well, there's lots of Alzheimer's and dementia because of this one thing. It's really a soup of things that are going on in the world that are contributing to chronic disease. But I can't help but think, though, that it is interesting that we don't really eat brain anymore, and we used to. Like, people used to eat animal brains. And I just find that fascinating that the levels of dementia and Alzheimer's have skyrocketed over the last few decades, really the last 50 years. And it's like, why? Like, if you talk to great grandparents, if they're around, they probably ate brain. Like, that was something that was very common. And it was right around mad cow disease that it got a real bad stigma. But it's something that actually, if people ever get an opportunity to eat, it's super good. It's like you can make like a chocolate pudding with it, for example. It's really got this really kind of custardy texture, and it might sound gross to some people, but it's incredibly nutrient dense, and it's nutrients that would probably be supporting our own brain health. So I like to think I tend to gravitate toward that like supports like. But just to go into a little bit of the kind of vitamins and minerals in organs. So you basically have, it's rich in fat soluble vitamins like A, D, E, K.
Yep.
It's got basically everything that's in a prenatal is in an organ. So I think it's really fascinating that what science is telling us to eat to create life, to nurture life, is all in organ meat. I call it Mother Nature's multivitamin, but it's basically got, it's got peptides. It's rich in peptides, small amino acid based, molecule peptides. So thymosin, tufsin. It's got iron, magnesium, calcium, riboflavin, folate. But what's really cool about it, and why it's so important that it's Mother Nature's multivitamin, is that every nutrient that needs the other to be more absorbable, like iron and magnesium go together, right? Like I said, there's fat soluble vitamins. Well, you need to eat food with fat soluble vitamins, but this is a food when you eat it. So it's all is working within itself. So it creates like this amazingly bioavailable product. That's really what is so amazing about it. Because when we take a supplement, or even when we eat fortified food, for example, which a lot of standard American dieters are eating, you don't know what your body's absorbing and what it's just peeing out. Like, you don't know. And a lot of times it's peeing it out more so than it's actually absorbing.
Right.
But when it's coming from a whole food source, you're more likely going to get it absorbed, because it's something that the body can recognize. It's something that is the minerals and vitamins that are complementary are in there together. So I am such a huge, sure, as a chef, I've always been focused on food, but even as I get older, I more and more see like we're spending a lot of money on supplements, and you got to wonder how much you're just peeing that down the drain. Like if we just focus on real food, I bet you could get a lot more of your balance from the real food. And then you'd be really just micro supplementing, on more of a tested basis, like testing your stuff and making sure that you're really optimized towards your own needs versus just self-assessing or self-diagnosing or something like that.
Right. Yeah. And that's the benefit of having it in food form to see how much you need. Interesting. Cool. So when are you coming out with the brain?
Oh man, I have an idea. I have so many ideas for more product, but what's interesting is the access. So right now we're sourcing from New Zealand. That's where a lot of the supplement companies also get their product. Yeah, and it's because the US doesn't really have a supply chain for it. Those that do have it set up are privately, have private stuff going on. So I'm working on it, but like, you can't get brain here. Like in the US, you can't get cow's brain. Huh. If I can't create a brain product, it's probably going to have to be sheep, because I don't think the USDA, it's actually illegal to sell cow brain here.
Crazy. Probably because of
Yeah.
the whole mad cow thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because of the mad. Well, there's kind of theory that it's the mad cow, but the other theory is that actually it's backdoor deals because the pharmaceutical companies are using it. They're using some of these products. And so there's backdoor deals that with the pharmaceutical company and the government to ensure that they get supplies of certain organs.
Why am I not surprised?
Right. Yeah. I can't verify that, of course, but I've heard that.
Yeah, sure. Well, I take and have on and off for the last 9 months or so organ meat from a supplement from Heart and Soil.
Yeah, the great brand, absolutely.
Which there's New Zealand grass fed. We have one of the brain ones, which I take a little bit of, but the one that I've taken the most is the whole package. So testicle. I actually saw a huge increase in my free T, like 25 to 35% increase in like 2 or 3 months.
Did you feel it as well? I mean, because you obviously tested.
I was feeling, yeah. So because you're right, because in your blood results, there's your free T, and then there's another marker that actually is one is like how much you have, and the other is like what you actually feel.
Right.
I need to compare and make sure I understand both of those, but I'm pretty sure, yeah. Subjectively, I was feeling really good too, and still am, and yeah.
But right there, that's testament of like supports like, right? You're eating testes and your testosterone increased.
Exactly. Yeah. So that makes perfect sense, and I love that you shared that. So if you're having shoulder surgery, like my mom had shoulder. She go out and look for she want to eat the shoulder off of animals.
I know, right?
What's that piece? What's that cut?
Well, sort of. I mean, because collagen, right? Collagen is going to help her if she's having shoulder, and there's a lot of collagen in joints, right?
Right.
So there is truth to that, actually. I mean, I think it's fascinating. So there's this professor, Dr. Bill Schindler, and he looks at historically, he looks at food and humans, and how we've developed over the years. And he talks about and I'm not going to get this perfect, but this is the gist. So basically, it's like 3 million years ago, we were scavengers, and so we were actually getting muscle meat then. But we weren't the predators; we were scavengers. So we were coming in after the predators had already eaten, and similar to the buzzards, we were just grabbing whatever scraps we could get. Well, the predators were eating all the organs and a lot of the fat before the scavengers came. So we were getting some muscle meat, but he points out that not much changed in human development. And it wasn't until about 2.5 million years ago when we became a predator. We had a tool, not a crazy advanced tool, but something that we didn't have before. We were able to take down an animal, and now we were the ones getting the organs, the blood, and the fat, something that we had not historically gotten much of. And there's a little bit of coincidence at the time. We also got fire around that time, but no, like they could track it basically that those three things, the organs, the fat, and the blood are really where we started to take off and transform as the humans we are today. We started getting language. Our brains developed from getting those three sources. We started getting language. We were able to take on more tools and then eventually evolve to where we are now. Wow. But I just always find that interesting, particularly with this movement around carnivore, where everyone's just focusing on muscle meat. It's like, I just don't buy it. I don't buy that we only should be eating muscle meat. I also don't buy that we need to eat organs. Like, I don't believe that you need to be taking organ supplements daily. Right. I think that if we were in a tribe and we killed an animal, there might be, 23 of us in the tribe, maybe a little bit, 23, 35, something like that. There's one animal, right? There's one heart. There's one liver, right? We're not going to all get tons of that, right? Maybe it's going to go to the sick people, the people that are pregnant, the little kids. We might get a little bit of it, but we are definitely getting more of the animal than we are today. But my point being is that even primitively, we did not eat organs every single day.
Right.
And, so that's why I like eating it, because your body, like if you're using Pluck, for example, you're just getting micro dosing. I'm not trying to pretend you're getting as
Yeah.
much as you get when you're doing supplements.
Sure. I love that you call it microdosing.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
It is.
Small doses over time of nature's multivitamin, like you said.
Exactly. But why I like that versus going all in is because, like you and I talked about at the beginning of this, we all got the organs already in our freezer and we're not eating them, right? And so when I was just at the biohacking conference in Florida, Dave Asprey's conference, and I was asking people, I'm like, so how often are you eating organs? Oh, I eat it once a month. I'm like, okay. Or some people were like, oh, I really only eat it like once a year. I'm like, okay. So that's human nature. Human nature is that we are not consistent. We have best intentions, but we're fallible, right? So that's kind of my point. It's like, wouldn't you rather just do a little bit all the time than doing maybe even once a month? Because like our focus of how much we should be doing of something, I feel like that's the wrong focus. I feel like the focus we really should be, the thing we should be asking ourselves is, how often are we doing that thing? And you can look at any aspect of life, from intimacy to food to exercise, you name it, sleep, whatever you want to focus on. Just pick one. Let's just pick intimacy. So if I'm someone that struggles with intimacy, if I go and hug someone for 24 hours, one day a year, does that really move my intimacy needle?
Right. No.
If I go and work out in the gym for 12 hours once a month, is that going to really move my exercise needle?
It's frequency versus quantity.
Exactly. That to me is where change happens. Mm-hmm. That is where that's what really moves the lever, is doing that healthy thing daily. And so that's why I like, yeah, so you're only sprinkling micro amounts on your food, but you're doing it daily. You're doing it with every meal. You're treating it just no different than salt and pepper. And now you're moving the needle, because the other powerful thing about it is that you don't even have to think about it. We already season our food. Right. It's not a new habit.
Do you do it while you're prepping it, or after it's been prepped, or both? Or what are your best practices?
That's a great question. So it depends on what I'm making. If I'm making ground meat, I do it. I mix it into the ground meat.
Okay.
And then I also add it afterwards. But if I'm doing a steak or fish or just some kind of non-ground meat, like a cut, I will do it afterwards. I'll use it as finishing salt. And I do that because I want to maximize flavor, but I also want to maximize nutrition, and heat destroys nutrition. And that's true for everything. I mean, like when you take muscle meat, it's raw state, it's most nutrient dense. The minute you stick it on that stove, you're degrading it a little bit. It's not so intense, obviously, that you don't get nutrition, but I just want to if I'm going to do micro amounts, I want to maximize it. So, and it also tastes really good. So I also just want to maximize flavor. And
you lose the taste if you use it prep.
Yeah, exactly.
Cooking it versus,
exactly. A lot of it gets burnt or heated, left on the pan.
Right.
I mean, that's why you can add like a little bone broth or liquid to it, and then kind of get the juice, of whatever it is. That's always nice. Create your own like little sauce with that.
There you go. I dig it. Yeah. So like for our clients, our meal prep, Elevated Eats, for athletes that are eating our food, that they receive fully prepped meals in glass containers. When they go to reheat the food, the best time, to throw this guy on the meal is as you're reheating it, or like right after you reheated it.
I would. That's how I would do it. Now you're holding up Pure though. So Pure is just the organ meat. That one has no salt and no seasoning.
Okay, so yeah, got it. So this is probably like the full bore, like all in.
That one is no different than capsules. It's just not encapsulated. So that one really is apples to apples. Like, so that one is like a fourth of a teaspoon is about equal to a capsule. So if you're doing, between a half a teaspoon and a teaspoon a day, you're getting basically like two to four capsules. So that's pretty good for each person.
So you've got other products with actual other seasonings.
Exactly.
Like salt, sea salt.
We use Redmond real salt. And then, then it's got lots of other seasonings and herbs in it. And I always kind of describe it as the other three We have zesty garlic, we have spicy mild, and then we have original or all purpose. And that those three provide flavor to anything you add it to. The pure one though is kind of, it's really versatile. Like you could add it to your smoothie, to your coffee.
Right.
It's kind of cool in that sense. And what's interesting is a lot of people who are carnivore or don't want any herbs and don't do garlic or onion, they are treating it like a seasoning. They're just pouring it right over their steak, and it's giving some nice umami flavor, because that's any of the hardcore carnivores will know what I'm talking about. Like when you go carnivore and you're just using salt, like your food it's really bland after a while. Like you get kind of bored, or at least I did.
I bet. Yeah. So you've done full carnivore. Tell us like what else you did. It sounds like you woke up from your lifestyle and wanted to change, less stress, and create something that was more impactful and just a better model for you. What other health hacks did you take on yourself that you've experimented with and really seen some big benefits from?
Well, as a chef, I was always having to, I was really having to treat myself as a guinea pig. So when I got into the business of private chefing, the really popular, the big trending book at the time was called Fat Flush. So I had to understand not only the diet, but I had to understand like how to cook really well with it. So I would just, every diet that was trending, I was doing it to myself. I was going through the diet and then making sure I understood it backwards and forwards. What I found, I mean, you name it, I pretty much tried it. I mean, I did the Master Cleanse, man. That one was really popular in Hollywood for a while. And I did that like 3 times. That thing killed me. Just because I think it's such a horrible cleanse. But the one diet that I did that was amazing, I felt better than I've ever felt in my life. It was so effective, but yet it's just not realistic. And it's basically called raw primal. So what it is I was eating raw meat. Basically, everything I was doing, raw dairy, raw cheese, raw meat. If I was doing any vegetables, they were raw. Like everything was raw. And it was amazing. I talk about the most bioavailable food, you know what I mean? Like everything was just incredibly nutrient rich. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. So you were doing raw veggies too. I'm curious, like what veggies? Because a lot of the veggies,
not cauliflower and broccoli
aren't the best to have raw, right?
And not kale. Right. Like, I was having sometimes some parsley, lettuces, things like that, easily things that were had a lot of water in them.
Got it. Cool.
Yeah. But in terms of the meat and the fish, it was fascinating because I found I didn't need to eat much and I was completely satiated. It was hard. It was hard to get over the kind of like, I was making these little like raw meatballs, and it was just kind of hard to get past it. But eventually I really enjoyed it, but it's just not practical. You know what I mean? We had a newborn at the time, so it was easy for us to do it. But if she started to get older, we couldn't keep it up because it's like, you're not going to feed your 6 to 2 year old like raw meat all the time or anything like that. They could get sick. Their immune systems are still building, right?
Right.
So we did it for about 30 days and we felt great. It was incredible, but just, it couldn't go out. We couldn't really go out. We couldn't spend time with our family. So, or not our family, our friends. And so eventually though, what I fell into is I find that I probably mostly carnivore. So I'm eating mostly whole animal, but I still do crave fruits and veggies sometimes. And I just kind of follow what that is. Usually it's
go based on intuition.
Yeah. Because this is another thing that Bill Schindler pointed out, Dr. Bill Schindler, is he said, we're the only species in the world that needs to look to someone else to tell us what to eat. Yeah. Isn't that incredible when you think it took me, when I read that, I'm like, oh my God, he's so right. And that is
that because we think it's smart to ask for help from other people that are
I think it's because we're out of touch. We're completely out of touch with our connection of what we need to eat, like what our body is telling us to eat and what's available. And I think we're also manipulated. I mean, the way food, this ultra processed food that has these crazy flavors to it, that they're not found in nature. So our bodies don't know what to do with that, or the connection to that. Like, because historically, when you ate when you found flavorful food in nature, that usually meant it was nutrient dense. So flavor and nutrition go together, typically in nature. Well, now look at us. Like you go into the grocery store, you buy some ultra processed kind of, I don't know, like candy or anything like that. And it says like strawberry this, but there's no strawberries in it. And it has this crazy flavor. And your body's like, where's the nutrition? Where's the nutrition? And it's never coming. And so you just keep eating because your body's waiting. You're waiting for your body to say, I'm full, but it never comes because it's empty calories. And so I think we can't, modern living, yes, there's lots of stress in modern living, but we cannot get past the fact that we are being manipulated now. Like what we find in the grocery stores, the majority of it is not found in nature. So
right.
How do you navigate that?
Yeah, just
intuitively,
Exactly. It starts with recognizing it, right? Waking up to where you fall, and are you eating too much processed food, and understanding that there could be a big disconnection between what you're eating and your brain and body's ability to assimilate, and because our cells are our cells are geniuses. Like I was talking to someone the other day, and they're like, oh, I'm taking so many different supplements, all for a specific reason, and it's it's in addition, they had a protocol for nutrition too. But they're like, oh, I just feel like my body's not going to know what to do with all of this. And I'm like, well, our bodies are pretty smart. I mean, they're maintaining life. And of course, it depends on what exact product you're taking and how much of it and all that, and how things interact with each other a little bit. But our bodies are pretty freaking smart. So we need to tap more into the body and go back to whole food based way of eating, and can make such a big difference. And that's cool. So I've never gone full carnivore. I certainly have increased my meat intake. I mean, I've always eaten meat. I've flirted. I've tried maybe like a few days of being a vegetarian. I couldn't go longer. Mostly because I knew it mostly wasn't good for me, but
I tried it. I delved into it. Absolutely. I did it. This is before I was a chef, but I did it for a while. And I say a while, like, less than a year, but still it was a while. And I was going through a total loss of sexual drive, and I was in my late 20s, and I did not know why. And then I got to culinary school, and they were talking about soy and the effects it has on men's testosterone and estrogen and all that. And I was like, oh my gosh, that must have been it. Like I couldn't figure it out. I was doing so much. Well, back in the day,
soy was a health food, right?
That was it. If you were a vegetarian, you were doing tons of soy. And I know there's a little bit more options now, like with all these lentil products and stuff like that, but it's still like soy is prominent in the plant-based diet. But and then from there I did like mostly chicken. And I feel like I've tried so many different, probably the one I'd never tried that I just think is personally, I do have judgment around is probably the fruitarian diet. Have you heard of that one? Where all you eat is
Steve
fruit?
Jobs.
Yeah.
Diet.
All you eat is fruit. Like
right.
I couldn't do that. No way.
No,
that one just intuitively doesn't sound right to me.
Liver couldn't handle that. And serious Steve Jobs, like that's what he was told to do. And, he sought outside guidance from others, and
he's not with us anymore.
I know, it's sad. So I want to hear
he died from that, but
didn't help. We'll never know, we'll never know, I guess. He could have used some Pluck. Just season your fruit with.
Well, dude, so check this out. You'll probably appreciate this. So at the biohacking conference, there was a vegetarian. Oh no, he was vegan actually. Vegan guy who had been vegan for 15 years. And he was like recognizing, he's at the biohacking conference, and he's like recognizing, hey, I'm realizing I need to start eating some meat, and I'm feeling ready to do that. But I gotta like kind of feel out what feels right. And he started with, like, he was at my booth and he was starting with Pluck, and I was like, right on, man. Like, this is a good this is a good first step because, if you think about, there's a handful of hurdles when you're a plant-based and you're starting to dive back into meat. One is that you're not producing the hydrochloric acid that you would have previously. So right there, you're going to need supplement support to get your body so that it can properly digest the animal protein. The other thing is that you probably are icked out, like you don't want to touch it, like the smell, like you're not acclimated to that. So yeah, like doing Pluck as a seasoning is going to be a really nice gradual first step because you don't have to cook, you don't have to touch it, you don't have to do anything. It's just sprinkle it on,
Totally. I love it. Hey, do you have any stories? It sounds like you've done a lot of experimenting with diets when you over your lifespan, but also when you were a chef to learn like, hey, what are the new things like that my clients are going to be asking me? What are some of if you were a chef for high profile, high net worth people in Hollywood, I'm sure you've got some stories, if you can't share names.
I know some of them I probably couldn't share, but yeah, I'll share. I mean, this is less about the food and it's more just about the lifestyle.
Yeah.
I showed up at one of my clients' houses, and a lot of times I would show up and I would be bringing them their food. So I would cook it in my kitchen, and then I bring over 2 to 3 days with about 2 days worth of food. And sometimes I'd go to drop it off, and they would invite me in. And at this one time, this client invited me in, and they had a shaman there, and they start talking about because they were just in Latin America, and he got some shamanic work done. And so he himself was I don't know, I don't even know how to describe it, TJ. It was really bizarre. But basically I got blessed by the client and the shaman. It was myself and this other person there, and we sat on the couch and they blessed us, and they did this whole ceremony with us. And it was just bizarro. I mean, it was really weird. And it was I was just kind of very acclimated to that stuff though, because that kind of stuff was happening all the time.
What year was this?
Oh man, this was, I think it was 2012 or 13.
Okay. Right. All right. Yep. And so did you start levitating?
No, I didn't feel anything. I mean, I'm not saying which client, but I didn't feel anything. But it was a great story. I mean, I loved knowing that I was going to be able to go home and I had this story of so and so just blessed me. You know what I mean?
That's great, man. Yeah, I mean, not to dismiss and I don't dismiss or make fun of shamans. I've had positive experience actually with one instance at an actual intentional ceremony. And which is very, very powerfully healing for me. But that I'm sure that totally caught you off guard. You're like, here's your food. So I'm going to give you food and you're going to bless me. All right. And
another one, this is the kind of stuff that used to happen to me. Another time I was delivering food, and it was the night of Obama's second win for president. And they invited me in and had drinks, and everyone was celebrating because the actor I was cooking for had been a very big proponent for Obama. And it was just surreal because I was hanging out in this actor's house with him and a couple other people. We're all hanging out, kind of just watching the news. And he gets while I'm there, he gets texted by Obama. So I was I was
that's cool.
Whatever the nth degree from the president, It's so wild. But that's the kind of stuff, that's the life of a private chef, and Hollyweird,
Hollyweird, exactly. Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today and diving into your story, the amazing benefits of organ meats and how you've creatively put them into different products that you offer to help people sneak them into their diet in a way that, like you said, is convenient, is easy, is simple, and frankly tastes good. So I'm gonna dump some of mine on tonight on our meal tonight. I don't know what we're eating, but it's gonna have some organ meats on it. But at the same time, I'm gonna try to lean in and find a way to prep all that liver in my freezer. Any tips on that for me? Any guidance?
Absolutely. So one thing I would do is, because what's overwhelming is when it's defrosted. So, and they are large. When when you get the liver, it's pretty big. So what I always recommend is don't defrost it. Take the frozen liver and just grate it. Grate it into your ground meats, grate it into whatever it is, your sauce, whatever you're making, and then put it right back in the freezer. Because it's when it's defrosted that you're just like, what do I do with all this? You know,
Right.
and
Yes.
it's like, how am I going to eat all of this, you know, in this meal? And that's really where the pressure starts, is when it's defrosted. So just don't defrost it. Cut, you know, you can also cut off a little chunks of it. And like a lot of people will cut off, like, you know, I'm holding up, like, I don't know, like maybe a quarter of, I mean, it's not, like a quarter size of it. And then keep that frozen, like, so cut off about quarter sizes, keep those in the freezer. And then next time you're having a smoothie, you just throw one in your smoothie. You could do that too. And it will just blend up and you won't even taste it, because it's not the most dominant.
I might have to try that. And so for grading, I love that tip of not defrost. That has been my concern. We had for our cookbook we wrote, we had a guest contribute recipes. One of the recipes that one of our guests contributed was liver and onions. Dr. Terry Walls, if you're familiar with her
sure,
work.
yeah.
So liver and onions recipe from Dr. Walls and her partner are in our cookbook. And I will say we made it for the photo shoot.
But no one ate.
I don't think anyone, I mean, no, I think I might have tried it. And maybe we didn't prepare it properly, but those were thinner pieces. So those were easier, I think. A
lot of people overcook liver, and when you do, it gets even more metallic. You know what organ, if anyone out there is like, okay, I want to start with one of these organs, this conversation has inspired me. You know which organ to choose first is, don't go straight for the liver, go for the heart, and just get like chicken hearts or something. Like get the heart from the animal, because it's a lot milder and it's more closer to muscle meat. So it's just going to it's going to be an easier jump for people. Okay. Whereas liver is a different texture, and a different taste, but heart's not that far.
And we could all probably benefit with a little boost in our heart health.
Oh yeah.
I like that tip. All right. So great tips for using my organ meats. I will take out the cheese grater. You think that would work?
Yep.
Okay.
Exactly.
And
just grate it. Yeah.
And cook up my meals with that. And would notice it. And
just let the ratio dictate it. So like if you're adding it to about a pound of beef, I wouldn't go over, you know, I would start with maybe 2 tablespoons of grated liver and then maybe eventually graduate to 4, but I wouldn't go too much further than that for a pound of meat, or it's going to start to change the texture and the taste.
Got it.
Okay. Yeah. And same thing with heart. If you let's say buy some chicken hearts, you can just dice them up like mushroom and you know, just do like 2 or 3 at first, you know, when you're making spaghetti sauce or something, you know.
Okay. All right, sweet. I will say we do a lot of a lot of companies are now starting to wake up to the importance of how the consumers want organ meats, and they're doing blends, right? So like Force of Nature is probably like one of they've gotten a lot of momentum of that market, but we've actually found a new one. I don't know if you've heard of this company called Wild Idea Buffalo.
I have actually. I just spoke with the CEO just yesterday. They're awesome.
Oh, really? I'd love an introduction if you could hook us up, man.
I will. They're fabulous.
Their product. Have you tried their products?
I haven't, but I just talking to him and learning how they do what they do and why and the choices they've made. It's absolutely the gold standard of how and where you want your meat to come from.
Oh, love it. Yeah. Their sourcing seems really dialed in terms of the percentage. So theirs is just liver, I believe. But compared to Force of Nature, it's like 3 times the organ meats.
Yeah. Force of Nature is only about 10%.
Yeah. So this is like, I think 25%, give or take. Yeah. And it's buffalo in the ground. And it's pricey, but you pay for what you get. This stuff tastes amazing. We couldn't taste the organ meats. We could actually taste them more in the Force of Nature, and its consistency was just primo, man. So,
well, I'll let him talk it when he's on your podcast. But,
sweet.
But there is a reason for why you can't taste as much, and it's how they do the kill. So they do They basically,
right.
when they go to kill the buffalo, they're doing it's a sharpshooter in the distance. And so the animal is never in a state of panic before they kill it. It's one shot to the head. The animal goes down. None of the animals are around it are alarmed because they're from so far away. So it's not like a scary sound or anything like that. They go sniff the buffalo, then they walk away, just thinking, well, this one's gone. Like there's no stress. And when you don't have any cortisol going in the muscle and the product, then it's going to taste different. And I don't think any of us that are eating meat from even pastured meat, I mean, anyone that's eating meat from the normal system probably don't know what it tastes like to have meat from an animal that has not been in a state of anxiety.
It's too bad. Yeah, you're exactly right. And
so I think this company is one, if you want to taste pure animal meat that hasn't been messed with from a hormone level or from a
stress
response level, then this is the company to get it from.
Wild idea, Buffalo. Awesome. Well, I appreciate the introduction. Appreciate you being on here today, James. And I'm excited for people to dive into Pluck. How can people learn more about Pluck and the great work you're doing in the world?
Thank you. So Eat Pluck, EATPLUCK.com. And you can find us on socials at Eat Pluck as well. And if you want to, there it is. If you want to check my Instagram, I'm Chef James Berry. Check us out and let us know how you use it. Once you get some, let us know how you like it and how you use it. We really, really love our community and we love supporting our community. So, give us a shout out once you get it, because we love turning people. When you first mention organ meats or get people to eat organ meats, they make that face, that kind of like that kind of ick face, and so we love kind of changing that face. We love it when people try Pluck and go, "Oh, this is good." We love the surprised look of how good it is,
and with a smile on your face. Eatpluck.com. Awesome. Thanks, James.
Thank you very much.